What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Pennell here, breaking down the Cookout 400 at Martinsville, aka the paperclip, as we go short track racing for the second time this season. Now, we will not be bringing the option tire that we had at Phoenix. It's the softer tire that we used in the fall of Martinsville and Bowman Gray earlier in the season, but we do have a potential added twist this week. So there is rain in the forecast on Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. Now, fear not, the race will not get postponed, but we do have rain tires and we have not really used them too much, so it's just a potential added twist. But anyway, if this happens to be your first time here, what's up? My name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. Videos on Saturdays, live streams on Sunday, usually around 1 p.m. So come in, say hi, always a good time. If you do end up enjoying today's video, make sure you like down below, subscribe to the channel if brand new. Let's dive right into it. All right, let's talk some strategy here for Martinsville. Very small track, it's half a mile. It literally just looks like a paperclip. I can't describe it any better than that. And we have 400 laps this weekend. It used to be 500. Unfortunately, we used to be a proper country. Now they've taken away 100 laps from us, but it's similar to last season. But the name of the game this week, it's the most laps we've had in a race all season long, is dominators, dominators, and dominators. It's going to be extremely important. You will not win a contest without nailing some dominators this weekend, because there is a ton of points to go around, 275 to be exact. You do not want to miss out on that. Obviously, we have not yet practiced or qualified, but looking at our weekly visual, I'm not going to expand this just to short tracks. We're looking specifically at Martinsville. I'm, of course, using a lot of short track data for inputs and sims this week just because, but I don't want to just use one track. Martinsville is pretty unique, and guys that are good here just tend to be pretty good here. So if we look at the top right, those are going to be our best overall drivers in the next gen era here so far at Martinsville. It's about a 6-race sample size for drivers that have ran all 6 races. And you shouldn't be too surprised. Ryan Blaney, once again, up at the very top. I feel like I say that every single week. He just happens to blow an engine every single week. So hopefully that doesn't happen once again. But Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Chase Briscoe up there. Now, since he's in the 19 car, I do have some high hopes for him this weekend. Byron won the last spring race. Cole Custer has surprisingly been very good here for some reason. Joey Logano as well. So I would expect that cluster in the top right to be our potential main dominators, our contenders to win the race. And finally, moving on to the driver-by-driver breakdown, I do mention one thing first, and that's, of course, gotta let me do my plug, guys. It's a free video. Gotta feed the dog. But if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, and I guess baseball, since that just now started, link is down below the description or the pinned comment for that. I won't bore you to death and list every single thing on here. If you want to pause or take a screenshot, be my guest. But for the price that I have, you will not find any other place that has the same amount of data that I have to offer, especially since we include an optimizer for DraftKings and FanDuel and the contest sim tool for DraftKings, where you can send up to 5,000 lineups at once, depending on what kind of contest you're in, whether it be small field cash games or large field tournaments. It will have you covered. A very powerful tool, being able to see which lineups stack up the best in tournaments or which drivers have the best ROI before the actual race starts. If you want to come in, check it out. Make sure you take advantage of the free trial if you're a new user. Use the link down below in the description or the pinned comment. All right, it's the next day. Practice and qualifying just concluded. We're at Martinsville, so of course we got a ton of lap data. And let's just address the elephant in the room really quick. I know you see it. I see it. It's all I can think about. Ryan Blaney has red under his qualifying. And yeah, he is in the very back once again. And I know we've done this rodeo quite a few times, and he just keeps getting DNFs. Not due to a lack of speed or anything, just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or he's just so fast and the engine gives out. So we'll see what happens. But once again, Ryan Blaney has made himself the focal point of the weekend. So let's head over to practice here and look at some of the data that we got. Now, the consecutive lap averages are a bit wonky right now. The data I was pulling in, it was only going up to like 0.2. So some of these guys have overlaps. Like you're seeing quite a few guys under 1. I think by the live stream tomorrow or later this evening, that will be fixed. So just know there isn't like 3 guys tied for first. So I'm not going to try to look at the lap averages too much here, but we do have the lap by lap data. And of course, a lot of these guys ran a ton of laps. Now I have this, we can average this out by just the overall averages of their entire lap set here. Thing is though, some of these guys that ran less laps, they're going to be artificially higher than they should be, because I really don't think we should be expecting SVG, Todd Gillen, Ty Dillon leading the way on Sunday afternoon. So another way you could look at it is, I have a formula here. We can rank each data set here of 1, 3, 5, 10, their best runs within that, and also their average. And once again, though, some of these guys that ran less laps are still going to be inflated a bit. Like you have Bubba Wallace running double laps of SVG. Of course, some of his lap times are going to be worse once we get longer in the run, which is going to kill his averages a bit more. So just please use context when you're looking at this. Don't think, oh my gosh, Ty Dillon is in an absolute rocket ship. Well, you're in half the laps of a guy like Chase Elliott. So, yeah, of course, overall, he's going to end up looking a bit faster. But overall, I thought Bubba Wallace was one of the most impressive cars in the field. He's been good at Homestead. I'm sorry, not Homestead. Martinsville. He was really good at Homestead last week, that's for sure. But he's been good at Martinsville. Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Christopher Bell. He threw it on the pole. All these guys ended up qualifying very well. Ty Gibbs did. Now, I know we've done this same song and dance with Ty Gibbs. It feels like all season. Last week, showed a lot of speed in practice. Had speed in qualifying. Horrible during the race. And it looks like we're getting that once again. We'll see if he's horrible during the race this time. But he, once again, does look pretty good. He had some of the best overall 10 laps. And then once we expand to 15, 20, 25, if you're looking at the consecutive lap averages, he was one of the absolute, if not the best car in the field. So I understand if you don't want to go that route. It's been very tough playing Ty Gibbs this season. But overall, the car, once again, did look really good. Kyle Busch is up there, Ty Dillon. But again, keep in mind, the less laps you run, it's going to be a little bit inflated. I wouldn't say there's really too many surprises here. Burt Myers, Casey Mears, I feel like we all kind of figured they'd be at the bottom. So let's move over back to the homepage here. We'll go driver by driver, and we'll start with the 5-figure range. And I'll be honest, just eyeballing this, I of course have not run projections or anything. That'll be on the Patreon later this evening, and I'll have that ran to look over when we answer questions and just hang out tomorrow afternoon. But this looks pretty tough. I mean, Ryan Blaney, of course, is the obvious play of how good he is at Martinsville. Other than that, though, I mean, you can make a case for like 10 different dominators. So I really do think, besides maybe Blaney, it's going to be pretty spread out up front. But let's go over it. Ryan Blaney, if you're playing in cash games, he's going to be a lock. He's probably going to be the highest owned driver on this slate. He was good in practice, especially when he got really long into the run. We're using the same tire we did in the fall last year. And obviously, Ryan Blaney was absolutely incredible. If you're looking at the 6-race sample size we have in the next gen era at Martinsville, 2 wins in the top 5, all but 1 time, in the top 10 every single time, the second most fast laps. He's been a great dominator. He kills short, flat tracks. I mean, the only reason you're not playing Blaney is because you're sick of him blowing an engine every single week or DNFing, but that's stuff we can't project. He has been the best car in the field over the past month now, but 0 results to show for it. But we can't play it based off of that. We can't play based off of emotion of, hey, he's killed us the past few weeks. Why would I go back to him? Wipe it from your memory. Does not matter. All right, so now we have just basically 4 guys that can potentially dominate and win this race. Kyle Larson's also been good at Homestead. Denny Hamlin, he hasn't won here in over a decade, but he's also good at Homestead. Same with William Byron. He won the spring race last year. Then Christopher Bell on the pole. I feel like the most popular combination on DraftKings, at least, will probably be this Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney combination, or potentially, if you go down a little bit further, the Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney combination, because you're getting those early dominator points, and then Ryan Blaney's the guy that can move his way through the field and potentially be a factor late stage 2 or stage 3 at some point. So I feel like that is most likely going to be the route most people go. I still like Christopher Bell on FanDuel. Just the dominator points don't add up as much over there, so you can kind of get away with it. If, say, he slides back to 7th and William Byron ends up finishing 2nd, it'll just depend on the lap sled of how many points he actually gets from that, but it might be enough to where that doesn't matter as much. So other than Bell and Blaney, you can just throw this as the GPP pool, I would say personally. Larson was not that great in practice. If you're looking at his consecutive lap averages, it was a little bit further back. I thought Denny Hamlin had a bit of a better car, so I might slightly side with Hamlin here, but it's going to be razor tight. And then William Byron, you get the extra place differential spots, and he was about equal to them in practice. He should have a good car. I have no concerns about William Byron. He's also been very fast this year. Another guy that kind of had some issues where you just can't really project it. So I like all 3, but I do think the popular combo will be Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney, which those are the 2 drivers we always play at short flat tracks anyway, so I don't really think we should probably change that too much. And then dropping down to the 9K range, Elliott's almost the same play as Christopher Bell. I would say it's very similar. I don't think he's going to project as well because he's on the pole and Bell can control it at the beginning of the race. But Elliott should be a factor. Keep in mind, I said this earlier, but if you skipped over the strategy part, which you shouldn't, this is the same tire they used in the fall last year and for Bowman Gray early in the season. And who was almost winning the race last year at Martinsville? Chase Elliott. Who crushed the Bowman Gray race? Chase Elliott. And then they qualified 2nd. He's also been very consistent at short flat track. So if you're looking for a direct pivot off the Christopher Bell chalk, I mean, Chase Elliott's not going to be unowned, but he should be lower owned and he's a little bit cheaper. So I really do like Elliott in tournaments. Joey, man, I just hate to keep saying it, but I mean, all these guys are expensive for a reason. They look good. There's so many dominator points to go around. It's really hard to get away from some of them. I mean, same with Joey Logano. He's another guy that just Team Penske, they kill these short flat tracks, and he has just been consistent as ever at Martinsville. He has an average finish of 5.3 in the next gen era, which I believe is the second best, only behind his teammate Ryan Blaney also has 6 top 10s. And I believe you have a streak of almost 10 or 11 races of being in the top 10 every single time. So he's probably not going to project as well as, say, Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell, just because he's less likely to get dominator points because he starts a little bit further back, but he is right there in the same group. Same with William Byron. And you're going to want multiple dominators. And I'm not saying, like I said, Ryan Blaney is the obvious play, but if he doesn't end up getting up front and getting dominator points at some point, I mean, in tournaments, you can get away with fading him or being underweight to the field because let's just say, for example, you play Joey Logano, you play Chase Elliott, play Christopher Bell. I know it's very top heavy, but if all 3 of those guys end up being the main dominators and they dominate enough to where you pretty much need them, well, that's going to push a guy like Ryan Blaney out of the dominator pool because, sure, he can do well and finish 7th, and that's still a great score, but if all of these guys are getting 80-plus points because of dominator points, that can certainly work out. I mean, there is a ton of laps to be led here, and someone's got to do it, and I don't think it's just going to be one driver. So Ryan Blaney could potentially get pushed out of the optimal in GPPs because of that. Obviously, don't get away from that in cash games, but just something to consider. Then Chase Briscoe, he's also been very good here at Martinsville, but man, at some point we got to start fading drivers, and Briscoe might be the first one we get to. Not to say he hasn't been good here. I mean, he has just been incredible, but all of these guys we talked about are incredible here. So Chase Briscoe might be the first one we start getting a little bit further away from. On FanDuel, I could get to it more because, again, we're too as worried about those dominator points, and starting at 11th, if he finishes 6th, that's great. Like if Joe Logano starts 7th and finishes 6th, I'd rather have Briscoe in that scenario. So I'd say on DraftKings, a little bit harder to get the Briscoe, but on FanDuel, at the cheaper price point, starting 11th, it's a bit easier. And then Ross Chastain, I feel like we can probably cross off. I don't think he's going to gain enough spots to where he just slides into the optimal because I just don't think the dominator points are going to be there. I just don't think he's going to have enough speed, so we can probably cross off Chastain from that list. Dropping down to the 8K range of Alex Bowman, who's starting in 3rd, and he has been as consistent as ever this season. I thought he was going to fade back a little bit last week. I ended up sticking around the entire time and ends up just being in position to lead some laps late in the race and almost win until Kyle Larson came into play. But starting in 3rd, I mean, you put him in the dominator group, but he's definitely not a top dog in my opinion compared to Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, Logano, like all of those guys. I do think they'll end up being a bit better, so I don't think I'm going to get too much of Bowman. I mean, sure, am I going to have to project him for some dominator points? Yes, you throw in the dom pool, but not overly interested. Austin Cindric at $8,500. He'll be starting in 20th. I feel like my laps are going to be very top heavy with these drivers. Like a lot of them, I'm sure we'll have 3 on DraftKings. So if that's going to be the case, how are you really getting to much of these drivers in this range? You're probably not. I mean, your laps are going to look like this probably, and then you're going to have to dip down to, I'm just picking a random range, but to something like this. So this mid-range is probably not going to be very popular. Although once we get to the 7K guys, there's a couple, Ryan Preece and Brad Keselowski, and based off of track history, I could see them getting some steam. But other than that, I mean, Cindric starting in 20th. Like if he finishes 15th, sure, that's okay, but I'm not sure that's going to be enough in GPPs. Kyle Busch starting in 12th. He actually had a pretty fast car. On FanDuel, I could see getting to him at $7,500. Just, if he hangs around the top 10, that's enough on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's not that enticing. And I really think the same thing can be applied to Josh Berry here. This is a track that suits his style. The 21 car has had some speed this season, and Penske should be fast. So I think they're both better FanDuel plays than DraftKings, in my opinion. But like I said, the lineups are going to be pretty top heavy. It's going to be hard to get to that 8K range, in my opinion. For the people that aren't jamming 3 of these guys up top, I could see them dipping down to the 7K range as their potential 3rd driver. And you have Keselowski starting in 27th, Ryan Preece starting in 21st. I think both look fine. Ryan Preece is good at Martinsville, so is Brad Keselowski. The RFK cars should have speed. Their teammate Chris Buescher qualified up to 6th. They're all in the 7K range. I just noticed Buescher and Preece have been pretty good this season. Keselowski has just been lacking speed, and based off of qualifying, looks like he is doing that once again. In practice, he wasn't as bad. Looks like he's roughly around mid-pack. You can average this out, and it's a little bit worse, but again, the number of laps can skew that a little bit. I think he'll move up, but I am a little bit concerned. He could definitely go a lap down if he just can't make his way through the field, especially early on if we go green for stage 1. Ryan Preece, I'd say, has a better chance of staying in the lead lap and potentially getting a top 10. So I'm a little bit more intrigued in Preece currently. Then the rest of these guys are just going to be tournament plays. I mean, Tyler Reddick, he has a horrible history here at Martinsville. I'm not too interested. His lap times weren't that impressive to me. Running position of around 20th here, only 1 top 15. I feel like he's another guy that I'm just probably going to end up crossing off my list. He's so cheap. I know it looks very enticing because it's Tyler Reddick. He's usually a lot more expensive, but I think there's a reason he's cheaper this week. And Busher, I wish he was starting further back. It's just hard to do it. On FanDuel, like if he finishes 8th and he's $6,800, that can work on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I'm not overly interested in that. If he can still some fast laps, maybe, but man, that floor is a little bit low for me. I'd rather play Bubba Wallace personally. He was one of the best cars in the entire field in practice. He's been good here. Yeah, Martinsville, and that 23 car has had a lot of speed. And you get 2 extra PD spots, so I like him on both sides as a tournament play. And Ty Gibbs, another driver that was extremely fast in practice. Had some of the best lap times overall once we got really deep into the run, but it's the exact same scenario as last week where he showed speed in practice, especially in the long run, and then he qualified 13th, and he qualified 13th last weekend. So, look, I'm going to have to play some in tournaments because at some point the team's going to turn it around, but I 100% understand if you do not want to play him at all. He has just been so horrible, and there is absolutely no reason to trust this team right now. So I totally get it. Obviously, do not touch him in cash games, but he is 6K on FanDuel. And if the speed can show up during the race, and with having good track position early on, that will help him potentially stay in the lead lap as long as he doesn't drop like a rock at the very beginning. So staying in the lead lap, I mean, that can help him as well. But I like him more on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings personally, because on DraftKings, like I said, the mid-range, if you are playing 3 of these drivers up top, which I think a lot of people will, just because projections kind of throw you in that range, it's going to be hard to get to that spot anyway. But on FanDuel, the roster construction is a little bit different, and I could see myself landing there in GPPs. All right, 6K range. Kick it off with Noah Gragson, $1,600. He'll be starting in 24th. Looking at his Martinsville history, it's a 4-race sample size, usually around a 20th place car. I think he'll move up a little bit. In practice times, they weren't too bad if you're looking at the overall averages. Gragson was pretty high, 44 laps, so not like he quite ran 60, but it didn't look like he had a horrible car by any means. I think he'll probably be a borderline top 15 guy. Gragson has had some speed this year. Daniel Suarez will probably be a borderline top 20 car. I don't expect too much, but at that price point and for where he's starting, it keeps him in the player pool. Carson Hocevar showed quite a bit of speed in practice. I could see him being pretty popular starting all the way back in 29th. I have no issues with Carson Hocevar. And honestly, after that, not a whole lot that meets the eye here. I do think Cole Custer is pretty interesting, starting in 22nd. Some pretty good track history here. It's only a 2-race sample size, but he has ran pretty well, and he was one of the best cars in practice. Now, practice is never going to be the end-all, be-all, but starting in 22nd, that gives you some track position to potentially stay in the lead lap for a little bit, as long as you don't drop like a rock at the beginning. And the speed was there, so I don't hate Cole Custer starting in 22nd. It might be more of a GPP option, because just eyeballing it here, I'm assuming Hocevar will most likely carry ownership, and then SVG will probably carry some ownership as well, because he has some decent speeds in practice. And he only ran 1 race here, but honestly, he did not do too bad finish-wise. But at an average ranking position 25th, average finish at 12th, so obviously looks like we had a little bit of luck going on there. But I do think it kind of suits him well, this track. Some of the road course guys do have success here. Eric Jones is just a fine PD play, but I don't think the speed's going to be anything too spectacular. McDowell probably falls back a little bit. I mean, 15th, 20th place car. There's not a whole lot of upside there. I think I'd rather get Custer, which sounds disgusting to say. There's not a whole lot that looks great. I mean, yeah, you're just going to pretty much spray and pray in the back here, because if you're trying to afford all these big dogs, you just have to play randoms. And that's what I do for trucks. That's what I do for Xfinity at these types of tracks. I had a lot of Justin Carroll on Friday. Does he suck? Yes, he's horrible. He's not fast either, but he ends up finishing 18th. So somehow there's cars that spin out, trucks that wreck out, and they collect their finishes. And, you don't really care what happens as long as you nail your dominators. Hope they don't wreck out, and then it's all right. But Herb starting in 35th, Stenhouse in 34th, SVG. Haley is not good here for whatever reason, and he had his hood go up in practice. That's not a good start, at least. But if you look at his numbers here, I mean, he's just been horrible. Running position 28th, average finish of 30th. That's basically just where he is stuck in all day. So he had speed last week. I don't really see that being the case. So I think most people are probably going to go Hocevar, maybe Jones because of the place differential. SVG starting in 33rd. If we're looking at practice, we'll try to find a couple of these guys, see if they had any speed. Eric Jones is actually pretty far up there. Only ran 41 laps though, so probably a bit skewed. I'd throw him down a little bit. Herbst isn't too bad for where he's starting, but once again, only 37 laps. So, I mean, how great is he actually? Dinger's pretty far down here, which Dinger has not been that great here in the next gen era. Used to be, I believe, but not so much anymore. So, yeah, not seeing a whole lot there. SVG with, again, not as many laps, but he did have some speed there. So I could see most people probably going that route if you're looking for 5K driver. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. So hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Hopefully I'll see you on the live stream tomorrow afternoon. If you want to check out all the extra content over on Patreon, you know where to find it. Link will be found down below. But I wish you all the best, and I'll see y'all next time.